Hello everyone, I'm doing this as a bit of an emergency video. I wasn't planning on releasing another video today. I just did a video talking about the ITV Disney deal. Obviously that was actually taken from a live stream recorded a few days ago, but I've just been putting all that stuff up on the main channel, so if you guys didn't see the live stream, you can see my coverage of it there. But anyway, we've got some new news, I guess. The BBC have finally commented on Doctor Who. Now, while this isn't a direct confirmation of the future or a recommission or anything like that, it is our first indication of where the BBC's heads are at when it comes to Doctor Who at the present moment. And it comes from the BBC Studios CEO following the BBC annual report that they release. And yeah, I think this is probably the first bit of news we could vaguely call good that we've had in quite a while. It's been quite a, I guess, just sort of depressing period for the programme. There's no real way other than I can describe that. You know, obviously the reality war happened and I had a lot of opinions about the way that ended. And then obviously we're still kind of in a bit of a sort of grey area with the future of the show. This is our first bit of kind of official dialogue from the BBC on Doctor Who in quite some time. And while it doesn't reveal much new, it does show a stark difference from now to when it's often compared to 1989 with the end of the classic series. So I'm going to get right into it, but subscribe if you're new, that would be greatly appreciated. We are only like 8 subscribers away from 29,000, so if you're budget, you just press the button right now, we'll probably make it. Any support would be greatly appreciated, but let's get right into this. So I want to give credit again to TV Zone, who said new. BBC Studios CEO has said the company is really committed to Doctor Who as they continue to look at new ways we can bring the show to fans. Doctor Who, BBC committed to sci-fi series amid uncertainty about show's future. Tom Fussell, CEO of BBC Studios, the commercial production arm of the BBC, has spoken about the future of Doctor Who following the release of the BBC's annual report. Fussell said BBC Studios are, quote, really committed to Doctor Who and are, quote, continuing to look at ways in which we can bring the show to fans. He added, fans love the Doctor Who brand. It's been that way since before I was in short trousers. Commenting on the continuing uncertainty around the Disney Plus partnership, Fussell praised the streamer as a crucial partner to BBC Studios as a whole, adding, we share a lot of core values, so I'm really proud of the way that relationship has worked. And then basically it just goes on to talk about the upcoming plans for the CBB spin-off. So not a ton to go off here. It really is just this set of quotes. But this is important. This is important for a few reasons. Number one, it shows a direct difference between now and 1989. In 1989, it's worth remembering, most of the high-ups at the BBC hated Doctor Who and wanted nothing more than its total extinction. That's not where we're at in 2025. Even though the show is on shaky ground, and I've been very open in my concern about that, where we're at now is fundamentally different. The BBC is in a much less certain position than they were in the 80s and need all of the franchises and kind of revenue that they can generate, and Doctor Who is one of those things. Even with a more limited audience in recent years, it still has an incredibly devoted audience that care deeply about it and are very kind of invested in the brand and in the franchise and in the merchandise and all that sort of stuff. I mean, the very fact that this channel exists with nearly 30,000 of you watching, and I'm just one example, is evidence enough that there are people who are very dedicated to this show. The fact that there are people who will sit and watch YouTube videos of random people like me talking about this show is proof of that. Not every show has that. In fact, most BBC shows don't these days. And so, obviously, what he says about fans loving the Doctor Who brand is very true. And him reiterating the BBC's commitment to Doctor Who is good. I think it's interesting as well that apparently, obviously, he was asked directly about the uncertainty around the Disney Plus partnership, and Fussell praised the streamer as a crucial partner not necessarily to Doctor Who, but to BBC Studios as a whole, which makes me wonder if what I posited in the previous video, which if you haven't seen, I would suggest checking out, it's a good companion piece to this video, about potentially them doing a similar deal to what ITV are doing. Maybe that's more likely. For those of you who are uninitiated, ITV and Disney have literally just announced a deal a few days ago in which basically they will share a few different shows. So for example, ITVX will get things like Andor and the Kardashians, and Disney Plus will get Love Island and Mr. Bates versus the Post Office, for example. And it makes me wonder if, with him talking about Disney Plus in these terms as a more broad partner to BBC Studios rather than Doctor Who in specific, whether that is on the cards for the BBC. Whether the reason why we haven't heard anything about a potential Doctor Who Disney renewal is because they are negotiating a much broader BBC Disney Plus package, which would also include Doctor Who as a part of it. Again, I don't necessarily know whether that is true. However, if I remember correctly, there was a statement from, I believe, the CEO of Disney, Bob Iger, saying he wanted to increase international appeal for Disney Plus, as in bring in more shows, franchises, and, options that were, not necessarily American based, because obviously Disney are an American company, and of course they want to have a more broad, list of sort of countries who are more invested in their catalogue, and a good way to do that is to, sort of partner with different companies in different countries and, produce their shows, or help with producing their shows and bringing them to Disney Plus. And obviously Doctor Who is a very good candidate for that, as one of the biggest brands, even still, in British kind of entertainment. Even though, it's had a rocky sort of few years, it still is a big name, a big IP, a big part of British culture, and one that, if you have it on your service, even if it's not the biggest thing in the world, it is still a draw. So that's interesting, the way he worded that. Maybe I'm reading too much into that, but I find it interesting that he called Disney Plus an important partner to BBC Studios specifically, not just Doctor Who. It makes me wonder if there's something more on the cards there. I could be wrong, but I just think that was an interesting kind of point of note there, I think. Again, there's not much else to say about this, but I wanted to bring it to you because, of course, it's been a while since we've had some nice news. So it's nice to hear someone high up at the BBC say, no, we are committed to Doctor Who. When people asked me, they were like, well, what do you want the BBC to say? Because I said recently, I think that this sort of period of relative purgatory for the show is bad, not only for the show, but also for War Between Land and Sea, because we all kind of assumed that the reason they were sort of staying quiet on the future of Doctor Who is so that it didn't interfere with the war between the land and the sea. Obviously, they've still got that, sort of arrangement to see out. Those 5 episodes are the final part of the Disney Plus kind of deal. But my kind of thing is, I think that the longer this sort of period of complete silence goes on, the more damaging it is for Doctor Who, but also even for War Between the Land and the Sea, because all the oxygen in Doctor Who fan spaces that obviously that show is going to appeal to is taken up completely by speculation around its future. And just giving something like this, while not huge, goes some way in tempering some of those concerns. But let me know what you guys think about this. If you did enjoy this video, be sure to give it a like. Whatever your thoughts are, drop them down in the comments below. Subscribe if you're new, like if you enjoy, and I'll see you later.